it hasn't been that intriguing so far, the Lions tour, to be honest, although most of the stuff has been newsy. It'll be a newsier update on the Lions than we like.
Indeed. Well, we hedged our bets and didn't go to do the Sharks preview as a separate one midweek, and kind of just as well, because that game wasn't that interesting, and now we get to see it again.
Yes.
So we will touch on that a little bit later, but I suppose with that we will pivot into the Lions as well, because that's where it all started, and we've had a few games. The tour is well and truly underway, at least. We have a couple in the bank. And a couple of clean victories, one against the Lions 56-14, and then most recently against the Sharks 54-7 as well. Similar enough score lines in both. Ellis Park, the first test of the Lions tour was the Ellis Park altitude, and I think the tourists have passed that with flying colours.
Yeah, no question. I mean, listen, it was very messy. Obviously we have the Bulls game, as you can see, postponed there. And there's obviously been lots of talk about the COVID issue. The Lions had a case in the backroom staff. They also had a player who was tested positive, but then that seems to be a false negative. Yeah. And there's been a lot of chagrin and criticism going around, obviously with the box game cancelled as well against Georgia. Yeah. That things in South Africa aren't great right now, and that's terrible to see. I do think that they've done a good job of having the games themselves. I mean, I think the coaching staff and all the sort of organisers have done a good job making it as COVID safe as possible, and they have managed to get games going. True. And the real heroes from the Lions' point of view as well are the players, because they are not bothered. They're playing hodgepodge teams thrown together, not even wearing the right jerseys,
splits,
and just loving it. I mean, just loving it. They're such quality players. I think Northern Hemisphere rugby has come on a long way in the last few years. I think that the quality, possibly you could argue it started maybe with that Saracens team, but there's like a few different turning points that from the doldrums of 2015 all the way to now, but it seems to be at a peak at the moment where these players are just as much as Kiwi players just enjoy throwing the ball around and are sticking passes and can play the sort of jouet brand.
As well as the physical, for bludgeoning power game as well, pretty well rounded. We were saying as we were seeing the team announcements that it might be the most stacked a Lions squad has ever been, and you can consider the omissions like listing 15s and 23 match day 23s of guys not selected who are that really good quality as well. So the depth in these nations now is really, really something to behold. And by contrast, some of the depth in teams like the Sharks and the Lions when shorn of their Springboks is absolutely no match at all. I mean, the Lions, they you're right. The opposition was negligible, and there is an element of there's not too much can be learned from these games. There's definitely an element of truth to that. But at the same time, the Lions, the players are playing out of their skins. They're throwing offloads, they're moving the ball really well. They're winning contacts, going for tries, hunting the ball constantly. They were just bullying both of those teams and never taking the foot off the neck from the very first whistle. Josh Adams has been spectacular. That's true.
What a start from him.
Scoring. Making himself undeniable by grabbing all the tries that are going. 15, 11, doesn't matter. Owen Farrell, I thought, had a brilliant game. Chris Harris against the Lions was great. Hamish Watson likewise. Adam Beard, I thought, went well after much of the criticism, just throwing those lovely passes. Actually, so did Navidi. I thought the two boys came in there. Both of their first touches were pretty silky and class, and it was just hit the ground running straight in as if they hadn't missed a beat. It was very impressive, and there was no issue with the forced 7-1 split that they had to go with on the day with the Sharks due to all the kind of COVID permutations where things out of that halfback combinations were completely changed. There was a wholesale changes the day of.
Faz comes straight in a numberless jersey and just lights it up. But I do love that. There's definitely an element, to touch on your point just about the lack of opposition, that there isn't much we're learning from a test point of view. I mean, I think earlier in the series, or before the series started, I was saying keep a critical eye on these games and you get an inkling into how the Lions are going to play. It's that's maybe sort of true, but we don't have much of an inkling of what they're going to do once they're stopped from playing, because they haven't been near enough for even a phase over the course of these first two games of the tour. I mean, there was moments when Finn Russell was getting the ball and he just had time to do anything. He could throw a wide pass, he could throw a short pass, he could step in, he could carry, he could throw a crossfield kick in.
Think about doing all of those things and then do something else.
Exactly. And then contrast that with the Springboks against Georgia on the weekend, where Absent Dadza got the ball and straight away Peter Steff is in his face.
The line speed in that game. That was a proper test match. Actually, from both Georgia and South Africa, there were two sides, certainly for the first half, that went at it hammer and tongs. You couldn't quite say that for some of these opening games. It's understandable understandable. Like we really like the Sharks. It was very disappointing to see the Sharks be as toothless an entity as they were, but they are missing their most Springboks of any nine, is it, I think, of their squad, and that is really the spine of their team. And one of the things we were noting watching kind of Springbok or South African rugby, be it the Curry Cup or the Super Rugby Unlocked thing, is that you'd see kind of some scruffy play and stuff, and then every now and then you'd see one of the Springbok squad make a ridiculous play, and like any game you watched, the Springboks were the ones standing out as just a cut above, and so you remove them from those teams and then suddenly they are just a little bit less than. And then you contrast that with the Lions, who are all like at top players at the top of their form and all vying for places, and it's just a complete disparity in terms of intent as well as quality.
I mean, there were some moments, I think of like that last try that Duhan van der Merwe got, wherein or was it Josh Adams? It was one or the other of them, when Elliot Daly did the little basketball pass.
Oh yeah,
and it looked very pretty, but actually just the it was late in the game, but the speed at which the Sharks players got off the line there was just nothing to it. The Lions turned it over and the two of them just stood there until way too late, and it looks like Elliot Daly's got the ball off under pressure, but there's just no pressure, and defensive pressure is what the Springboks are all about.
True.
So there's an element of concern around just whether or not these games are there's a point to these games at all.
Adequate preparation for what's coming.
Maybe the Bok play is to just play possum and give the Lions nothing to work with ahead of the test matches apart from good instinct, because they haven't had to face a proper defense. I mean, last Lions tour, I mean, I think a lot of the energy of the tour was brought up by those club games. I mean, they were so competitive. The Blues and the Highlanders.
True.
They were just great games.
True.
And
there were some tight ones the last time they were in South Africa as well. I know the Western Province pushed them to within 2 points or something, as did the Cheetahs, who they're not playing this time around. So I think they drew with the emerging Springboks, or the Springbok A at that point. It was the 13-all draw in the 09 one. So they were competitive, tight games at that point. So we haven't had that. Obviously, it's the hodgepodge of a kind of preparation. It's a condensed format anyway.
And you'd wonder how much the bubble is just playing on these these domestic teams in South Africa, and even just the extent to which constantly playing each other and allowing themselves to sort of collectively form bad habits, where they're just in these rhythms where, like, oh, you've got to turn over but there's space in the backfield, so you'll kick deep or you'll kick for touch, and we know all of our teams do this, and it's just agreed upon. And so when a team rocks up who you haven't played and does something unexpected, you're all of a sudden stuck in the mud and you don't know how to deal with it. I think there's an element of that. It's not the best advert for parochial rugby. This
no, it's not. And to be fair, like it's not unique to South Africa, although the magnifying glass is on them currently because there's a Lions team touring there. But like, I think a lot of the parochial rugby, with a few notable exceptions, Aotearoa being one of them,
of course.
But like, even looking at some of the Pro 14 when it was all domestic, like it was forced through COVID to be interpros every other week, and you can see the bad habits of one nation, like be it the 1872 Cup over and over again in Murrayfield, or our own frailties of Leinster, Munster, and just narrow, slow, bludgeoning, no speed, no counter-attack, and then suddenly you face someone that culminates in performances like that Bulls showing against Benetton, where like they were just not used to a KBA approach from Benetton. Benetton didn't kick to the touchline at all. They kept it all in play and just outpaced them. And that there's an element of that. That is the fear, certainly from a South African point of view, is like maybe we've been developing and reinforcing bad habits and we're not up to the speed of something, because like all these players have come fresh from even a Champions Cup or like in some cases a top couture, but definitely a Premiership and like competitive seasons of kind of, even though it's club rugby, international rugby, where
Six Nations footy as well,
exposure to Six Nations as well, exposure to Champions Cup stuff where you're playing French teams, you're playing English teams or whatever.
When you consider how slow all these nations were to get the uptick back in the Autumn Nations Cup time as well. There are definitely, if I was a Springbok fan, I'd be a little nervous right now. I don't think you'd have expected your club sides to be as impotent as they have been.
The silver lining is just how good they looked against Georgia.
That's true. I know
they're proper lads.
That is true, and we'll touch on that game as well. We've a bit of Lions news to get to well. Just obviously there was all of this issues around COVID, which we touched on. They had the positive case. The positive case in the player has now been declared a false positive. I mean, the lad has tested negative, so all the players who are isolating don't have to isolate. I think the overwhelming majority of the squad are vaccinated, so from that point of view it looks like the tour could be back on track. Obviously there's major issues around COVID, The Springboks have had their own issues around COVID. Their game was cancelled, and there's a wave exploding across South Africa.
And there was talk that Georgia might play the Lions, and then Georgia had COVID.
Yeah, it's just going around. It's almost in the air at the moment. It's the variant that's going around seems to be just going everywhere. But it's terrible to see conversations around immunology and viruses instead of rugby from our point of view, but obviously sometimes it's hard to keep the world out. But touch wood, obviously I think a lot depends on the Springbok squad staying healthy, but with the level of vaccination among the Lions squad, you could be hopeful that the tour itself will go ahead. And I'm certainly not going to jump on board the bandwagon of people just bitching about it or cancel it or this is wrong. I mean, hindsight is
farce. All of these words, sensationalist rubbish.
Well, there's an element of that to it, but I definitely think in hindsight they probably should have gone with ahead with the tour in the UK, just brought all the teams home, vaccinated them out of a gesture of goodwill. The British government, that would have been amazing. Or you could have, even if you were planning on doing the tour this way, you could have done an event where you had Georgia and all the Georgian teams over to Twickenham, shake hands with people, get vaccinated, go back over to South Africa. Yeah, or something. Not that far-fetched, but it's hindsight now. But it's all hindsight now. I think now that they're there is a way to do the tour. I don't think that there's an appetite in the South African public to cancel the tour. It's not like the Lions are spreading the virus.
No.
But at the same time, obviously, it's casting a shadow over proceedings. There's no way we get fans now, and it's just going to... Hopefully we roll on the test tour. But we do... in the absence of the Bulls game, we do have another game against the Sharks coming up, which we'll touch on in a moment. There's a bit of news update from the Springboks as well.
Yes, there is actually. It's more sad news, but nothing to do with COVID, which is a welcome change apart from the fact that it's to do with Snyman. We've touched on this story. Obviously, for those who don't know, Snyman, Dealindi, and a couple of other Munster heads all received burns, or all ended up with second and third degree burns after.
I don't think anyone was third degree, were they?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
First degree is most severe. Third, like they're
sorry.
So not that minor burns anyway. Okay. In any instance. But the worst of them was Snyman, who was apparently the instigator. Apparently, what happened was he chucked petrol on a fire that was going, a little kind of bonfire, and then the people around him in Dealindi, one of them, were splattered, possibly as trying to stop him from doing something horrendously stupid, but failing ultimately. Yes, he is now undergoing skin graft surgery, so it is very unlikely that he will be available. Not just the recovery from the skin graft surgery, which will take time, obviously, and time is not on his side in this one, but also with the injury he sustained at the start of last season. He hasn't played any rugby. He is in the squad, but he must be kind of far from the plans at this point with all this. But that being said, there were other knocks as well. The Georgia game did go well for them, but Eben Etzebeth went off with a minor rib injury at half time that they are confident will recover in time for the tests, but he's probably wrapped in cotton wool till then. And that goes with Daragh, who, amongst other things, had a recent kind of tibia, ankle and meniscus tear, a really nasty leg injury as well. Goodness. So they are running short of locks, and that's why Gatland was making mention of the fact that Peter Steph du Toit lining up with 4 or 5 on his back is an eventuality the Lions are aware of may actually happen.
I mean, you could definitely see the logic to it. It just feels like the way that the Boks played against Georgia, they need him out in the wide channels. They need him leading the defence on the edge, and they need him out in the wide channels in offence. He's just too important in that link role from I guess the blindside flank in South African parlance.
Yeah.
But I just think they kind of need him roaming, and I wouldn't if I was in charge of the Boks, not that I would ever be qualified for such a role, I'd give consideration to Marvin Ory starting ahead of moving Peter Steph, because he's just a linchpin on both offence and defence in the position that he's in. So I would not foresee them making that decision, and I don't think it'd work if they did.
There you go. It's certainly a possibility, though. It's just they keep popping up, and like where they do have massive amounts of really good locks just all over the world. Seemingly every club side has a very decent, capable Safa lock like in their engine room. So there are stocks to choose from, but a lot of their first choice charges are suffering from all kinds of setbacks. And
Franco Mostert looked good, though.
Mostert looked very good, which is silver linings here. And then there's guys like Hugo out of the squad who, if he can grab a hat-trick in 10 minutes or 6 minutes as it was, he might get himself in. But I think that was it for Lions news. I don't know if there's anything else. It's all just Bulls match postponed, which we know about as well.
Yeah, we have another game between the Lions and the Sharks to look ahead to.
Yes, the second of the 2-match series between the Lions and the Sharks. None of which will be played in Natal, oddly enough.
Yes, it'll be in Loftus this week. Yeah, it's a curious one, but the Lions are hopefully going to be able to play this one. Like, again, it's one of these situations where you're not going to learn anything from it. It seems the Sharks were the only, team who are going to step up, who are of any level. Mm-hmm. But, the Lions are going to pick, if they can, and a bunch of fresh legs and fresh heads who are all world-class seasoned test internationals vying for a position in their, like, the test team. Yeah, the test team, one of their career highlights. So they're all going 90 for it, and then you have the Sharks, who are this, seemingly depleted and also just tired seemingly from all of these domestic games and the constant bubbling and just the psychological factor of having, the weight of what's going on in South Africa over their heads, and they got spanked in the midweek.
Yes.
Like, I just...
Short turnaround for a team that's already missing 9 Springboks as well.
It feels like this game's going ahead just to fill a broadcast schedule.
Well, it's
Sky Sports want to have this slot reserved for a Lions game.
It was thought about. It was going to be Lions v Georgia at one point, and then that didn't become tenable.
That would have been great.
Credit where it's due. The Sharks don't seem to have COVID, which is like that's something
bubbling
well is what I will say for them, because this game is going to go ahead on Saturday, as same schedule as you say, a TV schedule. It's going to be refereed by Wayne Barnes, the man in the middle. I think he's one of the non-neutral refs involved in this, just because of the bubbling nature as well as why they have.
They've loads of SAFA refs as well. It's all good.
It makes perfect sense. They have 2 SAFAs on the sideline, Yako and AJ Jacobs, and then Stuart Berry, another SAFA in the TMO as well. So a pretty good officiating crew there for this game. I don't know if they'll be too involved other than keeping the play going and restarting the game after tries. Yeah, it's hard to gauge anything. I would hope that the Sharks might have a rallying moment where they reflect on how poor they were, and because I know and believe they could be better than they were. It's obviously extremely tough on them, but get a few new guys in there, freshen up the team a little bit, and just defend aggressively. That's the only thing. Just challenge, get off the line and challenge the Lions. Manny Lebock for captain, is it?
Yeah, I know. They need to be a defensive team primarily, and they do have issues on the ball. They should kick the leather off the ball, because they can't stick passes. Kick the leather off the ball and defend. With intensity.
Well, they normally do bring into an intent and a defensive kind of shape and belligerence.
Get out of the line, shut down things, challenge the Lions, ask questions of them. That's all I'd like to see from them, but I don't know if that's too much to ask or not.
We would like to see a tighter game for sure, just for a test, and I would have thought that the Sharks would be the ones to bring that, just purely because they tend to be one of the more prickly, if not the most kind of prickly,
the ones that do well away from home, all of that stuff. But they didn't look up for it on the midweek, and I don't think that's going to change.
The short turnaround with the depleted forces, I doubt it. We don't obviously have the teams just yet, do we, for this one? Because the Lions, it's such a last minute fixture.
The Lions will probably have to wait till the day of the game to name teams with testing and everything, so that's understandable. It's not that important, and as I say, there's not too much to be learned. At the moment, we're really, Gatland has an instinct. I think next weekend he'll probably try and put some form of team together. Next, if they get a Saturday game, I think he'll try and pick more or less his first test team and put it together then. We might have some answers then on what way he's going and what way he's thinking, but at the moment they're just playing jouet, and they're doing stuff they wouldn't get away with against the Boks. So it's kind of it's all moot at the moment, I'm afraid.
It is moot and muted. It's been kind of a week dominated by off pitch antics as opposed to on
and
field.
If the club side stepped up and really performed, I think you'd have more conversations that were positive. It's just the fact that they haven't, and the games have been, they're going through such rigmarole to play these games, and then you watch them and you're like, wait, why are we doing this? It's 110 to 21 over the
first 2 games. Well, that could change this time. It could get worse.
It could indeed. There is another game that we might not be back until. The South Africa A are taking on the Lions as well, and this is potentially an interesting game. We might come in with a proper preview for this one if we can get a couple of teams. I'd love to see the Springboks throw a few bolters in there, like the likes of Esterhazy, Tyrone Green, guys who could step up and be in the test team to get a look at them.
This one should be for a la emerging Boks is what they were called the last time out. But
they should also just throw some of the guys who didn't play for the Boks the last game. Throw Faf in, throw Colby in, just make a game of it. I'd love to see them do that. Just throw some full test guys in.
In what world is Colby on South Africa?
This world where he needs a game before he takes on the Lions.
He just played a Tocador's final.
well, get him out there anyway.
Of course I would be all for getting Colby out just for the eyeballs. You know, he's worth watching. He's worth the price of admission alone. Granted, there is no price of admission, there's no one there, but he would get people more intrigued in a game than they might otherwise be. Now, if we see a South Africa A team and we feel it might be a one-sided affair similar to the others, we may skip that preview.
Yeah, exactly. It depends as well on what kind of time we have early next week as well. But hopefully we can get that to you. If not, there will be another pod anyway next week, so you needn't worry about that.
True. Thank you for tuning in to the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed what you hear, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below as well. We enjoy hearing your opinions too. Thank you.